The story of U-864 begins in the final years of the Second World War, in a time when desperation, innovation, and secrecy defined the actions of nations. By 1944, the Third Reich was collapsing under the relentless pressure of Allied advances on both the Eastern and Western fronts. Yet beneath the surface of this chaos, Germany's military and scientific elite were still pursuing a final hope, a transfer of technology and resources that could alter the balance of power, or at the very least, delay the inevitable defeat. Among the most audacious of these attempts was a secret mission codenamed Operation Caesar, a clandestine submarine voyage intended to deliver critical war materials and advanced technology to Imperial Japan. The mission's vessel, U-864, was a Type 9 D2 long-range U-boat designed for endurance and capable of reaching the far reaches of the Indian Ocean. Her objective was nothing less than to link two distant Axis powers separated by thousands of miles of hostile ocean. The war had forced Germany and Japan into a precarious alliance. Communication between the two nations was difficult, and cooperation across such vast distances had been fraught with risk. By 1944, Germany had lost most of its overseas territories and safe harbors, making the logistics of any intercontinental exchange nearly impossible. But Hitler's command staff, under increasing pressure from both internal collapse and Allied superiority, was determined to send Japan whatever technological secrets could still be shared, including jet propulsion, radar systems, and potentially even materials connected to atomic research. U-864 was one of the few vessels chosen for this mission. Her construction had been completed at the Deschimag AG Weser shipyard in Bremen in late 1943. She was commanded by Corvetten Captain Ralph Remar Wolfram, a skilled but relatively young officer known for his methodical precision and composure under stress. The crew, numbering around 70, were among the most experienced submariners remaining in the Kriegsmarine, veterans of long patrols in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. What set U-864 apart from other U-boats was not just her mission, but her cargo. Stored within her pressure hull were hundreds of metallic canisters containing nearly 67 tons of liquid mercury, sealed in steel flasks. Officially, this mercury was designated as ballast and industrial material for Japan's armament production, but historians and researchers have long suspected that its purpose was far more significant. Mercury was an essential component in several experimental weapons and potential atomic technologies. Whether intended for conventional armaments, detonators, or atomic research, its value was immense. Alongside this volatile cargo, U-864 carried blueprints, technical components, and possibly even key personnel, engineers and scientists whose knowledge was meant to strengthen Japan's military capabilities as Germany's own war effort crumbled. This transfer of technology represented one of the final desperate gestures of Axis collaboration, a last attempt to unify their scientific resources against an Allied world that was closing in on all fronts. The mission began in December 1944. U-864 departed from Kiel under conditions of absolute secrecy, her orders sealed and known only to Wolfram and a handful of naval intelligence officers. She was to navigate through the treacherous waters of the North Sea, past the British blockade, and into the open Atlantic. From there, she would cross the equator, refuel at Japanese-controlled bases in the East Indies, and finally reach Japan. A voyage of more than 15,000 nautical miles through some of the most heavily patrolled waters on Earth. Even in the early stages, the mission was beset by problems. U-864's engines, among the most complex diesel-electric systems built by Germany at that time, began to malfunction shortly after departure. Vibrations in the machinery caused by improper alignment generated dangerous noise levels, a fatal flaw for a vessel that relied on silence and stealth. Wolfram, aware of the danger, requested authorization to return to Bergen, Norway, one of the last remaining operational Kriegsmarine bases in the north, to repair the engines before attempting the Atlantic crossing. This decision, though necessary, would prove fateful. Bergen had become a critical hub for U-boat operations, and Allied intelligence had long since placed it under close surveillance. Unbeknownst to Wolfram and his crew, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park had already intercepted German communications revealing the movement of a special U-boat heading north. The Royal Navy, under the direction of Admiral Sir Max Horton, quickly devised a counter-operation. Submarines were deployed to monitor the Norwegian coast, including the newly commissioned British vessel HMS Venturer, commanded by the 25-year-old Lieutenant James Launders, a calm, analytical officer who would soon make history. As U-864 limped toward Bergen, repairs were made under the constant threat of Allied bombing. In January 1945, as the crew worked to realign the engines, a devastating air raid struck the base, destroying several nearby ships and damaging the submarine's conning tower. Wolfram's men worked tirelessly to patch the damage, but the delays stretched on for weeks. The longer they remained in Bergen, the more likely it became that their mission would be compromised. Yet Wolfram was determined to complete the voyage. With the engines partially restored, he ordered U-864 to depart once more in February 1945, unaware that a British submarine was already hunting them. The sea conditions were brutal. The North Sea in winter was a churning expanse of gray water, high winds, and freezing spray. U-864 moved cautiously along the Norwegian coast, navigating by sonar and dead reckoning to avoid Allied patrols. Inside the submarine, the atmosphere was tense. The men worked in near silence, aware that every sound could betray their position. The mercury cargo, stored in steel flasks, emitted faint metallic clinks with each swell of the waves. None of the crew fully understood the significance of their cargo, only that it was critical to the Reich's final strategic efforts. British intelligence, meanwhile, had pieced together fragments of the operation through decrypted Enigma messages. They knew a U-boat carrying a special shipment was en route to Japan and that it had departed from Bergen following engine repairs. HMS Venturer was ordered to patrol the expected route. Launders and his crew maintained radio silence, relying on sonar and meticulous navigation to intercept their quarry. What followed would become one of the most extraordinary submarine encounters in history, the only underwater duel between two submarines fought entirely below the surface. U-864's engines continued to erratic erratic noise as she cruised submerged near the coast of Fedje, a small island north of Bergen. The rhythmic mechanical thrum, normally inaudible, carried unusually far through the cold water. On February 9, 1945, HMS Venturer's hydrophone operator detected faint mechanical sounds, a repetitive, irregular pattern that did not match any known surface ship. Launders ordered the crew to slow and listen. After hours of tracking, he concluded they had found a submerged U-boat likely proceeding on a zigzag course to avoid detection. The next several hours unfolded like a chess match played in the dark. Launders plotted the sound bearings on a chart, predicting U-864's probable course. He maneuvered Venturer to intercept, but firing torpedoes at a submerged, moving target was almost impossible. No one had ever attempted such an engagement before. Using nothing but calculations of depth, bearing, and time intervals, Launders manually computed a firing solution, adjusting for ocean currents and the suspected course of the enemy. Inside U-864, Wolfram's crew was unaware that they were being stalked. The men were exhausted, the air thick with oil and condensation. The engines droned unevenly, masking the faint echoes of another submarine nearby. At 12:14 p.m., HMS Venturer launched her first torpedo, followed by 3 more in calculated sequence. Wolfram, detecting the approaching weapons too late, ordered evasive maneuvers. The submarine rolled hard to starboard, diving deeper, but 1 torpedo struck the midsection. The explosion was catastrophic. The mercury canisters ruptured instantly, releasing clouds of toxic vapor and heavy liquid metal throughout the wreck.
The sinking of U-864 in February 1945 was not merely the destruction of a submarine, it was the burial of a secret, a hidden chapter of the Second World War that would remain unknown to most for decades. In the immediate aftermath of Germany's surrender, Allied forces focused on reconstruction, occupation, and the dismantling of remaining military assets. The Atlantic and North Sea waters were littered with wrecks, both surface and submersible, casualties of a relentless conflict. U-864, lying in 150 meters of water off Fiji, was largely forgotten, her existence known only to a handful of Royal Navy records and the wartime reports filed by Lieutenant James Lounders and HMS Venturer. In the early post-war years, Norwegian fishermen occasionally reported strange obstructions on the seabed near the Fiji coast. Nets would snag unexpectedly, and sonar operators in the emerging commercial fishing industry noted anomalous readings that defied explanation. These incidents, while minor, were the first signs that U-864 had not simply vanished without trace. Yet, in the context of post-war rebuilding and amid thousands of sunken vessels in the region, no urgent effort was made to locate her. The war was over, the immediate threat long past, and few considered the possibility that a sunken submarine could harbor materials of such strategic importance. It was not until the 1970s and 1980s, as underwater exploration and commercial diving technology advanced, that U-864 re-entered historical consciousness. Maritime archaeologists, surveying the seabed for wrecks, began to document her location with precision. The initial surveys revealed a submarine broken into 2 sections, resting at an angle, partially embedded in the soft seabed. Metal fragments from the hull had corroded over decades, yet sonar and photographic evidence confirmed the identity of the wreck. Scholars began to examine archival records from both German and British naval archives, reconstructing the events that had led to her destruction. One of the most pressing concerns, and the element that transformed U-864 from a mere historical curiosity into a global environmental concern, was the cargo she carried. The 67 tons of liquid mercury stored in steel flasks had remained sealed for decades, but the corrosive action of seawater threatened to breach containment. Mercury, an element known for its extreme toxicity, could leach into the surrounding environment, contaminating sediments and marine life. The wreck represented not only a historical relic, but a ticking ecological time bomb, a deadly legacy of war that extended far beyond human casualties. Norwegian authorities, alerted to the potential hazard, conducted extensive studies throughout the 1990s. Surveys revealed high concentrations of mercury in the immediate vicinity of the wreck and some dispersal into nearby fishing grounds. The realization that U-864's cargo could threaten the health of local populations, fisheries, and ecosystems brought renewed attention to the vessel. The task of salvaging or securing the wreck was fraught with difficulty. At a depth of 150 meters, and with the flasks fragile and potentially unstable, any miscalculation could release a catastrophic plume of mercury. Researchers began to document not only the environmental implications, but also the historical significance of the submarine. U-864 represented a unique convergence of technology, geopolitics, and secret wartime collaboration. The mission had been intended to transfer advanced military and industrial knowledge to Japan, reflecting the strategic desperation of Germany in the final years of the war. The very design of U-864, a Type IXD-2 submarine modified to accommodate specialized cargo and long-range travel, was itself a testament to the advanced engineering capabilities of the Kriegsmarine. Historians analyzing the mission noted the extreme risks undertaken by Wolfram and his crew. Navigating submerged along the Norwegian coast, evading British patrols, and carrying hundreds of tons of potentially lethal cargo, the operation was as dangerous as it was secret. The loss of all 73 crew members underscored the human cost of these clandestine efforts. Yet beyond the immediate tragedy, the operation also illustrated the broader patterns of Axis cooperation, the transfer of technology, the coordination of logistical efforts across vast distances, and the willingness to attempt near-impossible operations in the hope of sustaining an alliance against overwhelming opposition. In 1999, the Norwegian government undertook a formal environmental intervention. The wreck of U-864 was partially excavated, and specialized containment measures were employed to stabilize the mercury cargo. The operation required divers, remotely operated vehicles, and chemical engineers to ensure that mercury could be safely transferred into secure containment. During this process, additional artifacts and structural elements of the submarine were recovered, including fragments of the hull, personal items from the crew, and metallic components that shed light on the internal configuration of the submarine. Analysis of these recovered materials provided insight into both the mission and the operational conditions aboard U-864. The submarine's hull showed evidence of stress and damage consistent with the torpedo impact from HMS Venturer. Interior compartments exhibited signs of rapid flooding, confirming that the vessel had been destroyed almost instantaneously. Personal items, preserved in pockets and containers, offered a haunting glimpse into the lives of the crew. Letters, identification documents, and small personal effects that survived beneath the waves for over half a century. Scientific studies of the mercury itself revealed its dangerous potential. Mercury, released into the marine environment, can bioaccumulate in fish and shellfish, entering the human food chain. The Norwegian intervention, combining careful extraction with long-term monitoring, was one of the first operations of its kind undertaken on a W-2 submarine wreck. The project demonstrated how historical artifacts of war could intersect with modern environmental concerns, and how the consequences of military operations can extend far beyond the battlefield. Scholars also revisited the strategic rationale behind Operation Caesar. Archival research confirmed that U-864's mission was part of a broader pattern of Axis attempts to exchange technology and materials across vast distances. Japan, increasingly isolated and reliant on imports for industrial and military production, was a natural partner for such exchanges. Yet the logistical complexity of traversing Allied-controlled waters, combined with the ever-present risk of detection and destruction, made such missions extraordinarily hazardous. The loss of U-864, while a tactical victory for the Allies, underscored the difficulty of sustaining intercontinental Axis collaboration late in the war. From a historical perspective, the story of U-864 also raised questions about secrecy, accountability, and memory. For decades, the mission and its catastrophic end were virtually unknown outside military archives. Only through the combined efforts of historians, divers, and Norwegian authorities did the full scope of the operation emerge. This narrative, intertwining human endeavor, technological ambition, and environmental risk, exemplifies the hidden layers of history. How a single vessel can encapsulate a broader story of desperation, innovation, and consequence. By the early 21st century, U-864 had become both a cautionary tale and a subject of scientific interest.
Marine biologists, environmental engineers, and historians collaborated to monitor the site, study the dispersal of mercury, and document the submarine's remains. The story of the crew, their mission, and their sacrifice was reconstructed through interviews with descendants, archival research, and the analysis of recovered artifacts. It became clear that U-864 was not only a vessel lost at sea, but a repository of knowledge, tragedy, and ecological hazard, a microcosm of the wider human and technological dimensions of World War II. The legacy of U-864 also reached beyond Norway and Germany. In academic conferences, military historians highlighted the mission as an example of extreme wartime engineering, clandestine operations, and the interplay of human ingenuity with environmental consequences. The submarine story challenges assumptions about the scope of World War II operations and the lengths that nations would go to protect and transfer knowledge in times of existential threat. Thus, the hidden legacy of U-864 continues to resonate. The submarine, resting in cold waters off Fiji, represents a convergence of ambition, desperation, and technological daring. Its story is a testament to the extremes of wartime strategy, the human cost of clandestine operations, and the enduring consequences that extend long after guns fall silent. The mercury cargo, once a symbol of strategic value, became a reminder of the enduring hazards of war, a poisonous echo of a conflict that reshaped the globe.
After decades lying undisturbed beneath the icy waters off the Norwegian coast, U-864's secrets began to surface in the late 20th century. The post-war years had passed with little attention paid to the sunken submarine, but as marine technology advanced, the wreck became increasingly accessible. Sonar mapping, remotely operated vehicles, and diving expeditions revealed the full scale of the vessel and the extraordinary cargo it carried. Researchers were confronted not just with a historical curiosity, but with an urgent environmental problem. The steel flasks containing 67 tons of mercury were at risk of leaking into the surrounding ecosystem. Mercury, a dense silvery metal, is one of the most toxic elements to marine life and humans. When released into seawater, it can transform into methylmercury, a compound that bioaccumulates in fish and shellfish, eventually entering the human food chain. This realization prompted a series of emergency assessments by Norwegian environmental authorities. Studies confirmed that the mercury was gradually corroding through the steel containers, and sediments around the wreck showed elevated mercury concentrations. The stakes were immediate. If the flasks ruptured entirely, the local fishing industry and marine ecosystem could suffer irreversible contamination. The urgency of the situation led to international collaboration. Norwegian experts coordinated with German historians, maritime archaeologists, and environmental engineers to assess the best approach for containment. Yet the operation was fraught with danger. The wreck lay at a depth of 150 meters, with the surrounding seabed unstable. Heavy currents, cold temperatures, and the fragile state of the submarine itself made conventional salvage techniques hazardous. Divers and engineers had to develop specialized methods to handle the mercury safely while preserving the wreck as a historical artifact. Meanwhile, historians and researchers delved deeper into U-864's mission, uncovering the broader implications of Operation Caesar. Archival documents revealed that the submarine carried not only mercury, but also technical blueprints, specialized equipment, and possibly personnel intended to assist Japan in its war effort. The precise nature of the cargo remains a subject of debate among scholars, but the operation represented one of the most ambitious attempts by Germany to transmit strategic technology across continents in the closing months of the war.
The mission itself had been extraordinarily risky. U-864's journey through the North Sea and beyond was complicated by Allied dominance of the oceans and the effectiveness of intelligence operations. British codebreakers had intercepted communications, revealing the U-boat's route and objectives, and HMS Venturer had been dispatched to intercept the submarine. The resulting encounter, a torpedo attack on a submerged submarine, was unprecedented and remains the only documented instance of an underwater duel between two submarines. The sinking of U-864 was a tactical success for the Allies, but sealed the submarine's secrets beneath the sea. As the wreck became the focus of environmental and historical study, the human story of the crew gained renewed attention. 73 men had perished with the submarine, their remains still entombed within the vessel. Letters, personal effects, and identification documents recovered from the wreck painted a vivid picture of life aboard a World War II U-boat, the isolation, the claustrophobia, and the constant awareness of imminent danger. These artifacts transformed the story of U-864 from a technical and environmental case study into a deeply human narrative, highlighting the courage and sacrifice of men operating under extraordinary conditions. By the late 1990s, Norwegian authorities initiated an ambitious operation to contain the mercury. Divers worked alongside remotely operated vehicles to secure the flasks and prevent leakage. Specialized containment chambers were installed around the submarine, designed to stabilize the metal and isolate the toxic material from the surrounding environment. The operation required meticulous planning, as any disturbance could have catastrophic consequences. Even minor errors in lifting, securing, or sealing the flasks could have released large quantities of mercury, threatening marine life and human health. The scientific analysis of the mercury and the submarine itself provided unprecedented insight into German wartime engineering. The U-864 had been a Type 9D2 submarine, modified for long-range missions and heavy cargo. Its design reflected a combination of innovation and desperation. The Kriegsmarine sought to maximize endurance and capacity while navigating increasingly hostile waters. The cargo's configuration demonstrated the strategic importance of the materials being transported. Mercury, in particular, was likely intended for industrial and potentially weapons applications in Japan, reflecting the advanced technological exchange between the Axis powers. Historical researchers also explored the implications of U-864's mission for wartime strategy. The loss of the submarine highlighted both the risks and limitations of intercontinental cooperation between Germany and Japan. By early 1945, Allied control of key maritime routes made such operations nearly impossible. The destruction of U-864 underscored the difficulty of sustaining Axis alliances over long distances, especially when critical supplies and technological secrets were involved. Scholars argue that the mission represents the extreme lengths to which Germany went to maintain strategic influence, even in the face of imminent defeat. Beyond history, the environmental consequences of the wreck remain significant. Mercury contamination in the sediments surrounding U-864 has been monitored continuously, and studies have shown elevated levels in benthic organisms. While containment efforts have mitigated immediate risks, scientists warn that long-term monitoring is necessary, as even small releases of mercury can accumulate in the marine food web over decades. The wreck thus serves as a reminder of how the consequences of war can persist long after hostilities have ended, affecting ecosystems and human communities alike. U-864 also raises questions about maritime law, responsibility, and historical preservation. The wreck exists as both a dangerous environmental hazard and a protected historical site. Norwegian authorities have had to balance the imperative of public safety with the importance of preserving a unique piece of World War II history.
international collaboration has been essential in ensuring that the site is monitored, secured, and studied without endangering either humans or the environment. The human story intertwined with these technical and environmental issues remains compelling. Crew members aboard U-864 faced incredible challenges, operating in confined quarters for extended periods while transporting volatile cargo. Diaries, letters, and oral histories collected from the relatives of the crew reveal the psychological pressures of submarine duty, the camaraderie among sailors, and the fear of Allied detection. These personal narratives provide a poignant counterpoint to the technical analysis, reminding historians that history is not only shaped by machines, strategy, and resources, but by the choices, courage, and endurance of individuals. The legacy of U-864 continues to influence contemporary discussions about wartime maritime operations, environmental responsibility, and the long-term consequences of military actions. The intersection of historical inquiry, technological analysis, and ecological concern offers a unique case study for scholars, environmentalists, and policymakers. The submarine represents a convergence of strategic ambition, human sacrifice, and environmental hazard, a microcosm of the complex realities of global conflict. As research into U-864 progresses, new discoveries continue to emerge. Advanced sonar mapping, 3D imaging, and chemical analysis reveal subtle details about the submarine's construction, cargo configuration, and deterioration over time. These findings inform both historical understanding and environmental management, demonstrating the importance of interdisciplinary study in addressing challenges that span centuries and disciplines. Through decades of research, U-864 has transformed from a lost submarine into a symbol of the hidden legacies of war, the intersection of human ingenuity, strategic desperation, and unintended consequences. Her story is a stark reminder that even a single vessel, lost beneath the waves, can carry lessons that resonate across time for historians, scientists, and the public alike.
The final chapter of U-864's story is not simply about a submarine lost beneath the waves, nor solely about the mercury that threatened the fragile marine ecosystem off Norway. It is a story that encompasses the complex interplay of wartime strategy, human courage, technological innovation, and long-term consequences. From the moment U-864 slipped from Bergen Harbor to her catastrophic sinking in February 1945, the submarine represented a confluence of ambition and desperation, a testament to the extremes to which nations and individuals would go to achieve strategic objectives in an era defined by total war. Historical analysis of Operation Caesar reveals the meticulous planning, strategic foresight, and inherent risks of Germany's late-war naval initiatives. The mission to deliver advanced materials and technology to Japan across thousands of miles of hostile ocean was audacious, even by the standards of the Kriegsmarine. The submarine's cargo, particularly the 67 tons of mercury, reflected the critical importance of resources and knowledge in the global conflict. Mercury was not merely industrial ballast, it was essential for potential weapons development, detonators, and possibly nuclear research. This elevated U-864's mission from a conventional transport operation to a strategic gambit with potentially far-reaching consequences. The human dimension of U-864's story is equally compelling. Corvettan Capitan Ralph Raymar Wolfram and his crew navigated an extraordinarily perilous journey, facing the harsh conditions of the North Sea, mechanical failures, and the constant threat of Allied interception. The psychological pressures of submarine duty were immense: confined quarters, the constant risk of attack, and the knowledge that failure would almost certainly be fatal.
Diaries, letters, and personal artifacts recovered from the wreck provide a window into the daily lives of these sailors, their hopes, fears, and steadfast professionalism in the face of overwhelming adversity. Each decision, from navigation adjustments to the handling of volatile cargo, required precision and discipline under extreme stress. The encounter with HMS Venturer, commanded by Lieutenant James Lounders, stands as a unique event in naval history. It remains the only documented instance of a submerged submarine successfully torpedoing another submerged submarine. This extraordinary engagement demonstrated both tactical ingenuity and the lethal calculus of naval warfare. Lounders' manual calculations of depth, trajectory, and timing exemplify the analytical rigor required in underwater combat, highlighting the evolution of submarine strategy during the Second World War. The sinking of U-864 illustrates the lethal intersection of technology, intelligence, and human decision-making in wartime. Decades after the sinking, the environmental ramifications of U-864's cargo emerged as a pressing concern. The mercury contained within the submarine posed a persistent threat to marine life and human populations. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin, capable of bioaccumulation in fish and shellfish, leading to long-term ecological and health consequences. Norwegian authorities, in collaboration with international experts, undertook extensive measures to stabilize the wreck, contain the mercury, and monitor the surrounding environment. These efforts represent a pioneering example of the intersection between historical preservation and environmental science, demonstrating how past conflicts continue to shape contemporary challenges. The study of U-864 has prompted important reflections on the unintended consequences of war. While the mission aimed to strengthen Axis collaboration and technological exchange, its ultimate failure resulted in loss of life, environmental hazards, and the permanent burial of critical materials beneath the seabed. This convergence of human, technological, and ecological factors underscores the multifaceted legacy of military operations. Historians and scientists alike have recognized that understanding events like U-864 requires an interdisciplinary approach, combining archival research, marine archaeology, environmental monitoring, and historical analysis. U-864's story also illuminates broader themes in the history of technology and warfare. The Type IX-D2 submarine, modified for long-range missions and heavy cargo, represents the innovative engineering of the Kriegsmarine. Its design reflects the strategic ambitions and limitations of Germany's naval program in the final years of the war. The integration of specialized cargo compartments for critical materials demonstrates how technological adaptation was employed to achieve strategic goals. Furthermore, the mission underscores the importance of secure supply chains, long-distance collaboration, and risk management in global conflict. The rediscovery and study of U-864 in the late 20th and early 21st centuries have enriched our understanding of the human cost of clandestine wartime operations. The preservation of personal artifacts, including letters, identification documents, and small personal effects, provide insight into the lives of the sailors who perished. These items humanize the technical and strategic narrative, reminding scholars and the public that history is shaped not only by machines, strategies, and resources, but by the courage, dedication, and sacrifices of individuals. From an environmental perspective, U-864 serves as a case study in long-term hazardous material management. The Norwegian intervention to stabilize the mercury cargo required innovative techniques, including remotely operated vehicles, specialized containment structures, and continuous monitoring. The operation has informed modern practices in marine pollution prevention and the handling of hazardous materials in submerged contexts. It demonstrates that historical artifacts of war are not merely objects of curiosity, but can carry enduring consequences that demand careful stewardship. U-864 also prompts reflection on secrecy, intelligence, and historical memory. The mission had been shrouded in confidentiality, with only a few individuals aware of its objectives. The sinking, subsequent obscurity, and eventual rediscovery illustrate how critical wartime operations can remain hidden for decades. The reconstruction of the mission relied on a combination of archival research, sonar mapping, environmental studies, and the analysis of recovered artifacts. This interdisciplinary approach has become a model for the study of clandestine operations and lost military technology. The submarine's impact extends to contemporary discussions about the ethics of military operations and environmental responsibility. The persistence of hazardous materials decades after the conflict highlights the need for accountability and foresight in the planning and execution of military missions. U-864's cargo, while intended to enhance strategic capabilities, became an enduring ecological hazard, reminding us that the consequences of war are rarely confined to the battlefield. In summary, U-864's story encapsulates the complex dynamics of technology, strategy, human courage, and environmental consequence. From her ambitious mission to Japan through the dramatic underwater engagement with HMS Venturer to her ongoing challenges of containment and preservation, the submarine exemplifies the enduring intersections of history, science, and human endeavor. Her tale is a testament to the ingenuity, risk, and sacrifice inherent in warfare, as well as the lasting imprint such actions leave upon the world. The lessons of U-864 continue to resonate. Historians study her as an example of extreme wartime strategy. Environmental scientists examine her as a case of long-term hazardous material management, and the public is reminded of the hidden stories beneath the waves that link human ambition with consequence. In the end, the submarine story is not merely about a vessel, a cargo, or a crew. It is about the enduring complexity of history itself, and the ways in which the echoes of conflict continue to shape our understanding of the past and the stewardship of our present.